Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for CAS training in HMIS. We're here today for housing providers. So if you're joining us for CAS training for the first time, then welcome, and we're so glad that you're here. Some of you may also be access points and have attended training once already in the last several weeks. So welcome back, and thank you for returning. And we are going to jump right in. You may get a little bit of repeat information if you've been to the access point training just on some of those system goals that we talked about. You guys, you've gotten that from the access point side, and now you're going to get that from the housing provider side. So a little bit of an apology in advance if you've attended both. Some of this might be a little bit of a repeat, but from a different perspective. Don't let me lose you, though, because there is clearly some new and different information from the housing piece as well. So before we jump in, I do just want to introduce myself and my team. My name is Megan Starnes, and I'm your training coordinator here at MDHA. I'll be joined today later in the presentation by Frida Nelms, who's our HMIS director, and I'm sure many of you are familiar with her. We also have some other experts on CAS available to help answer your questions in the chat as we go, and then at the end of the session as well. So we have Alex Abraham here. I believe Stephanie DeMar and Samantha are going to be joining us at some point later on to help answer your questions. I do just want to also take a moment to acknowledge the fact that even though I'm presenting this training by no means was just me or just the one or two people who are going to be on the call today. There is a whole group of people here at MDHA and in different work groups across the community who are helping to make this transition possible. A lot of people have been working behind the scenes to make this truly a team effort to get this ready to roll out to the community. So we're very excited to be presenting it to you today and then supporting you in that transition over the next few weeks. Our topics for today, this is a long list, right? I want you to know that this, we're going to get through all this. Like I said, we're going to have a break, and some of it is going to be a review. So first, we're going to talk about what is CAS, right? And some system goals and the learning impact of this training on those goals. Then we'll go over how to change your organization inside HMIS, managing your client track notifications, viewing your incoming referrals, recording referral outcomes, and doing an HMIS intake actually from that incoming referrals page, which is pretty exciting. We will take a quick break if we have the time. I think that we will have time for about at least a 5-minute break in the middle of this 2-hour training. Then after that, we will look at some housing management things. So like I said, a lot of that part is going to be review because you are already hopefully using HMIS to record some housing inventory, unit availability, checking clients in and out of units. So we're going to review how to do those things and the impact that they have on our CAS referral process. We want to make sure everyone's on the same page moving forward because that housing piece that we've already started to implement over the last several weeks and months is really crucial to our CAS process. And if you haven't been doing that yet, then you'll definitely have the tools that you need to when you leave this training to start implementing that. So I want to jump right in. First, we're going to talk about what is CAS. I want to make sure we're all on the same page about what exactly it is we're working toward as a community. And then also define some terms and acronyms for you that you might see throughout the training and throughout this transition as we continue to communicate and offer that support. I have those terms for you on the screen. CAS, when we talk about the definition of CAS, CAS is a streamlined system for accessing housing and support services to help end homelessness in our community. It is mandated by HUD, but it's also designed to be flexible to meet the changing needs and resources that are available at any given time in our community. CAS provides a comprehensive crisis response structure to the way that our continuum fits together that will result in a more efficient use of our resources because we're going to match interventions to needs. And then it's also going to help us improve the fairness and ease of access to resources for those in our community experiencing homelessness, all the while prioritizing the people who are most in need of assistance. So I know that's a lot of words, right? You have that summary on your screen there and in the handout slides that you should have received from me yesterday. I do just want to go over those terms on the screen really quickly as well. So we have, of course, CAS stands for Coordinated Access System. Coordinated entry, or CE, you'll see that often as well. Many of you know HPL stands for Housing Priority List, and our CAS Q is the name of our digital HPL that is going to be managed in Client Track moving forward. So if we're trying to stop saying HPL, you'll probably, of course, still hear us say that a lot. When we say CAS Q, we're referring to the HPL as well. We are trying to get away from the phrase, the term DOPS, and we're actually calling that process now prioritize and match. It is a lot more of a mouthful, but that's the role of the CAS admin here at MDHA. And then you will also see the Dallas and Collin Counties CAS organization, or DCC CAS. Sometimes you'll see that inside of Client Track. Many of you already should have access to that organization for reviewing documents, but if you don't, then this training will get you that access as well. So CAS is not a new thing, right? Hopefully you were familiar with all of these terms. You have, a general understanding of what CAS is before I just presented it on this training. But this transition is going to change the way that our community uses CAS a little bit, and might change some processes too, both for the community and then internally at your organization. So the real goal of this whole system is to rehouse people as quickly as possible, so that we can reach this equilibrium where the number of people experiencing homelessness is matched by the number of housing interventions that we have available at any given time. But for us to get there and to kind of find that equilibrium, we have to know two things, right? First, how many people are experiencing homelessness, and what resources do we have available? So getting those numbers about the people in our community experiencing homelessness, that's made possible by assessing everyone as quickly as possible and getting them into the system so we have those accurate numbers. And that is what we've largely trained access points on, and many of you were on that training, and we've already begun implementing that, and people are populating our CAS Q, which is fantastic. In tandem with that, we need to align, identify, and scale our housing resources as a system to meet the rehousing needs that we see in the community, and that's your role as housing providers. So it really is going to be crucial that unit availability is identified, tracked, and measured inside of Client Track for this to work the way that it's built to work. The main point here is that while this CAS training is split into two different pieces, it really is those two parts of our CAS system working together, like we said, intentionally and efficiently, right, to accomplish that goal that we're working toward. So having all aspects of both of these sides of CAS inside Client Track is going to facilitate and streamline that collaboration across our community. While we identify the demand, the number of people experiencing homelessness, by assessing everyone and prioritizing based on need, we'll also keep track of supply in close to real time, with housing and service resources being tracked in the system. So HMIS is providing access points with a common assessment tool and more automated prioritization. We have a more streamlined system to manage the by name list so that we can take work hours off of that list management and put them into housing navigation. For you as housing providers, you're going to be using HMIS to keep our community's inventory of available resources, and then also to manage vacancies. So that involves having your unit inventory up to date in HMIS. And that also involves checking clients in and out of units so that CAS can see which units are available when they're ready to make a referral. HMIS is providing a more automated eligibility matching. So we do have some critical program requirements built into the system, and then CAS admins can see whether a client meets those eligibility requirements when they refer to your program. So when we say that HMIS is doing the matching, that really means that they're being matched to a housing intervention type, and then CAS admins are using those eligibility requirements to determine the best referral for that client. So I don't want you to see that HMIS is doing the match and think that once the client is enrolled, they're just automatically being referred to any kind of program. HMIS is matching that client to housing intervention, and then CAS admins are helping to refer that client to the best program for them based on availability and eligibility. So ultimately, that getting all of that into HMIS is going to help us be more strategic in our collaboration, right? Seeing those available units as we make the referral in the system. We won't have to do those Spiceworks tickets anymore. And that's going to streamline our process. The goal of all of these changes is to make CAS easier and more efficient. And I want to talk about what that looks like kind of practically. So we are eliminating Basecamp and the old MDHA DOPS and P-score process. And like I said, we're having Hmis do that automatic matching. So now when a client is assessed and enrolled into coordinated entry, they're immediately placed on the HPL or CAS queue. And we're training access points to do that. They've already gotten their training and they're populating our CAS queue now. We're also changing the way we prioritize documents. So documents are still important, but clients can be added to the CAS queue without them. Like we mentioned on the last slide, we'll be putting more efforts into housing navigation to help clients get that support in getting their documentation before they're referred. In just a moment, we're going to take a much more detailed look at documents than we did from the access point side. I want you to understand what that will look like for you, and I know that you might have questions about that, so hang with me. I promise that we're going to discuss that document piece, and then we can go over it more in the Q&A if we need to as well. So of course, we're also training you, just like we train access points. And like I said, the second half of this training is kind of more of a review because you've already been implementing some of these things of keeping your units up to date and managing that slot availability in real time or close to real time, right? Continuing to keep that inventory up to date and that availability up to date is going to be crucial so that we can make matches faster and then utilize the system and our community resources to their full potential, right? So if that unit is not updated in HMIS and we don't know to refer to it, then it's just sitting empty, which I know you guys don't want, we don't want, nobody wants that. Finally, we're also adding a lot more rehousing inventory to CAS with new CARES funding that's coming in, like a lot. And I know that many of you already know that. So we want to get this CAS process fully functional as soon as possible to make the best use of those dollars that we can as well. I'm not going to spend too much time on this learning map. I know that you guys have had access to this for a while. Each of these actions that we're going to learn how to do today in the system or review if you have been doing them is going to impact these goals that we've just talked about with the ultimate goal of significantly reducing homelessness in our community. That is the goal. So we want to make our processes more efficient. We want to collaborate better across the community and make sure that we're using our resources to their fullest potential. And the coolest thing about this is that these goals are essentially the same as the access point goals. Your actions in the system are different, but we're working toward the same goals in the community and each playing our part in that. So the CAS process overall will be the same as it has been. The main thing that is changing is when MDHA verifies documentation. So let's first take a look at the overall process, and then we're going to go back and plug documentation into that process and see where it falls in. So of course, diversion can happen at any point, but it's here at the beginning for more of a visual reference. If an access point can divert a client back to any safe and sheltered living situation, then certainly that's a good choice for that client. If not, then they will enroll that client in coordinated entry and place them on the CAS queue simultaneously. Then those clients are also enrolled in the Access Points program, and that's where they receive their support and services from, our street outreach programs, emergency shelters, etc., until they can be referred. That's where you all come in. So you receive that referral. You're going to be marking the referral outcome in Client Track. And then once the client is accepted, you're enrolling that client into your housing program. Once the client moves in, you'll check them into a unit and record their housing move-in date. And then eventually, of course, program exit, and you'll check that client out, which will happen for some programs more often than others, depending on turnover. So that process should hopefully sound very familiar. That's pretty much what we're doing right now. The change in the process is regarding documentation and when a client is added to the list. And so that kind of becomes more clear when we plug documentation into this picture. So historically, we were verifying documents before a client could even be placed on the list, meaning that our list was not an accurate representation of the people experiencing homelessness in our community and needing housing, right? It was a list of people who had their documents in place, which we just determined, right, based on our system goals, that's not what we need. For CAS to work properly, we need an active current list of everyone experiencing homelessness. So we can see where this old process kind of fails us immediately. by not providing that accurate and full count of individuals in our community experiencing homelessness. Moving forward, document verification is going to happen at the time of referral or shortly before. So eligibility documentation will be a requirement for a referral, but we've moved our document verification closer to the time of referral, and that has two major impacts. First, for the clients, it removes that barrier of needing documents to be placed on the CAS queue or HPL. Second, for you, it means that at the time of referral, the documentation is going to be more accurate and up to date, right? Because we didn't verify it 3 months ago when they were added to the list, we're verifying it right before referral. So again, I know probably more questions are coming up. We're going to keep digging deeper into this. Practically what this means for referrals and your documentation is this. First, looking at eligibility documentation, I want you to hear me loud and clear. MDHA will not refer without documentation of homelessness and, if necessary, documentation of disability. So for rapid rehousing, documentation of homelessness is all that's needed, and that could be a third-party letter or some other document that's uploaded to document check, but more likely it's going to be a record in Hmis, whether that's bed stays or enrollment in a program like Street Outreach that tracks current living situation. And HUD has clearly defined those as valid forms of homeless documentation, which means less barriers for the clients, and we love that. For PSH, both documentation of homelessness and verification of disability are required, and again, we'll only be referring clients who have them both. Of course, for PSH, that documentation is more likely a combination of documents that are found in document check, like third-party letters, and then Hmis records, because like we said, Hmis records do qualify to help build a client's history of homelessness that counts as valid documentation, but you're looking at that longer period of time. So more than likely, we're going to need several other documents to back that up. So you'll find those and your disability documents in document check as well. So when you're verifying clients' documentation in document check will be your go-to resource. But then you can also just go straight to that client's dashboard and use program enrollments during the given time frame to help verify their homelessness as well. All clients who are referred with will have this documentation in Hmis. So the system does require documentation updates every 90 days for a person to stay active on our CAS queue. So that means that, if you received your referral within that 90-day window, it's possible you might need some follow-up during that time period because the documents from a system perspective have to be updated once every 90 days, right, to be active on the list. But what that allows us to do is at least have that documentation available and up to date at the time of referral, and then you might need to do some light follow-up there. Okay, now let's talk critical documentation because this is different. Our community has committed to a housing first approach and has determined that a lack of critical documentation is not going to be a barrier for a client being referred to housing. So it is possible that you could receive referrals for clients who need support in obtaining critical documents like IDs and social security cards. MDHA is providing navigation support, and we're working with access points to do some internal shifting so that they can also maybe support in that way. But we're building that support in the community. That's not going to happen overnight by any means. Here at MDHA, we have already hired a few housing navigators, and we're working again with the community to garner more support there. For clients who are referred to rapid rehousing, housing navigators are going to assist the client in gathering critical documentation when they can. Housing navigation support is more likely going to be given to clients referred to PSH because they will probably need additional support in gathering documentation for extra requirements like city ties, any other things that the client just might need a little more assistance with. So it's more likely for a PSH client to receive that navigation support and have all their critical documents in place before referral, but it really is possible for either type of housing intervention, rapid rehousing or permanent housing, that case managers at your agency will need to support clients in obtaining those critical documents. Again, part of being a housing first community is agreeing collectively that housing the client is the first priority and that we will support the client in achieving that goal, including helping them gather their documents. So We have housing navigators helping to do that. Access points are going to be working to do that after they put the client on the list. And then you guys may also need to support the client in that as well. It's really going to be a community effort. So many of you may already know that to review that documentation, you need access to this organization in ClientTrack called Dallas and Collin Counties CAS. You may already have access to that organization because we've been uploading documents to Document Check, and you've likely been logging in to review them there. When you complete your new user training, you're given access to your agency. And then if you're completing this training, then you'll also have this CAS access. So I want to outline the differences between these two organizations and which organization you'll use which actions for. Really, the only thing that you will use Dallas and Collin Counties CAS for from a housing perspective is the CAS document check review. So you'll be logged in under your agency to do everything else related to your housing program, like enrolling clients, related to referrals, so accepting or rejecting referrals, and then also unit management, so checking clients in and out of those units. All of that is done logged in under your agency. The great thing about having a digital HPL or our new CAS queue in ClientTrack is that we can have the system send notifications to help streamline our communication within the community. So some of you may already have begun receiving some of these notifications as we migrated clients from our manual list into ClientTrack over the last several weeks. And we thank you for your patience as we kind of worked out some of those kinks in the system. But I want to take a look at who should be receiving notifications and what triggers them. And you'll see that the housing provider contact here is really the only one that applies to this training. So I'm going to go through these other ones really quickly. The CAS admin is the staff here at MDHA who are working in the CAS queue. They're going to receive a notification anytime you reject a referral, anytime a client rejects a referral, or if a client is a no-show. So those are three different, what we would consider unsuccessful referral outcomes. And when you record those, CAS admins are going to get a notification. That's just to let them know that that client maybe needs a different referral or, allow them to do some more follow-up there. The prioritizing agency is the Dallas and Collin Counties CAS organization. So users of that organization, for their clients, they're going to get a notification when a referral is made, and then also if a client is a no-show. So if you are assigned to a client under your Dallas and Collin County CAS organization, then you'll get that notification that a referral was made for that client. More likely that's going to be on the access point side. Case managers, which is just any HMIS user, you all have case manager access in ClientTrack. It doesn't matter what your role is at your organization. But what ClientTrack allows us to do is assign a user or a case manager to each enrollment in HMIS for a client. So again, this is mostly for access points, but those case managers who have enrolled that client into CAS will get a notification at the 83-day mark and then at the 90-day mark of their client having no activity, which is how we're enforcing that 90-day, or how we're communicating, that 90-day requirement for documents to be uploaded. So they're going to get like a 1 week out, hey, your client needs documentation. And then at that 90-day mark, hey, your client doesn't have any documents, they're going to be inactive on the list. And then they're also going to get a notification if the CAS admin reviews that client and sees that there is incomplete documentation for referral. All right, now for the housing piece. So a housing provider contact is one person at your organization who you have asked us to put in the system as the CAS contact for your organization, not for your program, for your whole organization. And that person is going to receive a notification anytime a referral is made to any program at your organization. So again, this is the only one that applies to this training setting, is this housing provider contact. And like I said, ClientTrack limits us to one person to receive those notifications at each agency. So we're asking each agency to designate one CAS contact, and that CAS contact clearly must be a user of HMIS, and they're going to receive that notification anytime a referral is made to any program at your agency. That means that most of you on this call will not be receiving these notifications on a regular basis, and definitely not receiving these notifications about referrals being made. only the one housing provider contact at each organization will get that notification. So some internal processes may need to be determined, right, about how that person communicates the referral information and to whom. That's not something that we can determine for you. Like I said, that's an internal thing. But of course, if you want more information about how that's working in the system or more guidance to help inform your internal process, we're happy to help provide that. My recommendation, if you're looking for that extra guidance, would be to maybe jot down your questions right now. And then at the end of the training, once we have a full understanding of this whole new CAS process and what's going on, you can either ask your questions in the Q&A or you can submit them in a SpiceWorks ticket for more individual guidance. I'm not going to camp out here very long because reality is that very few people on this call will be receiving these notifications. But if you are the CAS contact at your agency, you will get these notifications in a number of ways. Client Track will send you an email letting you know that someone has been referred. You'll also have these pop-up notifications in the system saying a client has been referred. You can see your notifications in your little notification bell up there near the top of your screen when you log in. And then Client Track also has this calendar view where you can go and look at past and upcoming notifications if you prefer that. For those of you who will be getting notifications, if you know that that's you, we do have a cheat sheet on our website and a tutorial video about how to view and manage these notifications. So I'll show you where that cheat sheet is in just a bit when we review our training resources. Make sure you go and check that out. Again, I don't want to spend a bunch of time here today because I know that several of you that you won't be getting those notifications on a regular basis. Okay, so that one CAS contact at each organization will receive notification of a new referral, but any user at any time can log in and see incoming referrals for your agency. So there's no limit to the number of people who can log in and see which referrals are coming in. It's just the notification that's limited to that one person. Remember that you'll do this while you're logged in under your agency, not Dallas and Collin Counties CAS. So you can think of that as your housing program is run by your agency, right? Your agency and Client Track is how you're going to access that information. And on the screen, you can see an example of just like a screenshot of 2 clients displaying on this list. We'll log into the system in just a moment, but I wanted to highlight a few things here without all the distracting menus and other buttons and options on the screen. So notice first that we have a referral date, and this is when the referral was sent. I see the client's name and the number of family members in that referral. I also see the provider name, which is your agency, and then the project that the client is being referred to. Next, I can see that HMIS project type. Then we have an eligibility column with a pass or fail option. So here is where those built-in eligibility rules come into play. You'll be able to see right away on this incoming referral screen whether or not a client is meeting those program requirements that we have built into the system. Now, there are a few types of qualifications that we cannot build into the system right now, like city ties. So that's why CAS admins are still manually reviewing that record and making sure that clients are referred to the correct program. So really, as a general rule, even if your eligibility requirement is not built into the system, you should only be receiving referrals for clients that meet your program requirements. We're not trying to send you clients that don't qualify for your programs. Finally, if there's a referral outcome that's already been recorded, it's going to display here in the result column. And I want to point out that the case ID at the end of this list is just a way for the system to identify that referral. This is not a client ID. So case ID, client ID, those are 2 different numbers. From this page, you'll be able to record referral outcomes. So again, still logged in under your agency, the first arrow next to a client's name allows you to record an unsuccessful outcome. So these are outcomes like client no-show, provider rejected, client rejected. And remember that when each of these outcomes is recorded, Client Track is going to send a notification to CAS admins letting them know that the referral was not successful. So I want to quickly go through each of these scenarios. Client no-show clearly means the client did not show up to your program to accept that referral. Provider rejected would be that you as a program are rejecting that client because they don't meet your eligibility requirements. Under our housing first approach in our community, really the only reason for that is that they don't meet program requirements. A lack of critical documents is not a valid reason for this provider rejected reason. And then finally, client rejected would be if the client does show up, but for whatever reason does not want to be enrolled in your program. So those three options again are unsuccessful referrals, and those are recorded under that first arrow. The second arrow is an intake button, and it will actually begin the program enrollment for the client directly from this page. So this is a successful referral, and obviously the goal is that you're using this button most often. It's worth noting that this is different than housing move-in. So at this point, the client has not moved in, but we're enrolling them in the program and accepting that referral. Then later we'll record the housing move-in date once they actually move into a unit. Enrolling your client here does not affect your unit capacity at all. So you're not taking a unit away or taking up a unit in the system by just accepting this referral and enrolling the client at this point. So what we're actually going to do now is log into ClientTrack and go through this process together of viewing an incoming referral, recording those referral outcomes, and then enrolling clients into your program directly from that screen. All right, so I'm going to log into ClientTrack, and what I've actually done is I have already created a test client. I've enrolled them in coordinated entry. I've added them to the CAS queue. I've gone back in as a CAS admin and referred that client to a program at, I have to choose some sort of housing provider, so I just chose the Bridge, a rapid rehousing program. So I'm going to now, what I'm doing is logging in as a user at the Bridge to view those incoming referrals. So I want to point out, first of all, up here in the top corner of my screen, you can see my name, so the user that's logged in, and then the organization that I'm logged in as. So when I click on this organization, you'll see that I have a work group dropdown and an organization dropdown. This organization dropdown is where I'll change my organization from whatever organization I work for to Dallas and Collin Counties CAS. For now, I'm going to leave this as my agency, the Bridge, for today, so that I can view those incoming referrals. Again, incoming referrals, you're going to see those from your agency organization. So I'm not going to change this at the moment, but I do just want to point out that to view those incoming referrals, I need to be aware of how I'm logged in. So I want to make sure that I am logged in as my agency before I try to go and see those referrals in the system. So once I'm logged into ClientTrack and I've confirmed that I am logged in under my agency, to view incoming referrals, I'm actually going to stay on my home workspace. So here's my workspace button, my workspace carousel. I'm actually going to stay on my home workspace here. And in the menu on the left, I see this option near the bottom that says Coordinated Access System or CAS. You may have to scroll down this list to see that. If you click on that menu option, then you see the option for incoming housing referrals. So I'll click on that page to open that list. And the system tells us here's a list of clients that are being referred to your organization for housing. So like I said, we have the referral date here, the client's name, the family members, the housing provider name, which is the Bridge, that's how I'm logged in. And here you can see that these clients are being referred to different projects. So some of these are being referred to this HUD COC project, while some are being referred to CARES ESG. We can see the project type, and then here's that eligibility marker. So we can see in training, we've set this up so we can see a little bit of everything. Some of these clients have passed eligibility and some have failed. If we click passed or failed, we can actually see which rules they're passing or failing. So if I click passed here for Mr. Jones, we can see that the eligibility in the system for this program is an adult over 18, no families, and this person passes all of those. For Jody Test here, if we take a look at why they're failing, we can see that it looks like they're not an adult and also they maybe have a family, right? So whatever reason they're failing those rules, you'll see it here once you click on that list. And again, this may not cover every single eligibility rule that you have for your program. These are the ones that we have built into the system. So you definitely still review that client's eligibility, review all of that documentation. We're not saying any of that needs to go away. Just to give you a quick visual for the information that we have built into the system, this client has passed or failed that eligibility. So the client that I put in was Michael Scott. And what I want to quickly do is go to Michael's record and review his documentation, right? I see this referral that's coming in. So I'm going to actually just copy his name and type it here into the search bar. And when I click search, I'll see this client, Michael Scott, and this looks like the right client. So I'll click on his name. I can see that the client is enrolled in an emergency shelter program. They're also enrolled in CAS. And at this point, this is where I will switch over to my Dallas and Collin Counties CAS organization to review documentation in Document Check. You'll see right now that Document Check is not an option here because I'm still logged in under my agency. So I'm going to click on my organization and click on the organization dropdown to change from the bridge to Dallas and Collin Counties CAS. Of course, I'm in training, so I have access to every organization, but you should only have access to your agency and Dallas and Collin Counties CAS. I'll click Apply. And now I see the CAS Document Check option over here in the menu. So if I click on CAS Document Check, I'll be able to see any documents that were uploaded for this client. Next to each document, there's an action arrow where if there is a document in the system, you'll be able to download it. I guess for this one, I did not actually add a document, but let's do that just so we can see that download option. So I'll just choose, oh, that was a terrible idea. That's a video. We don't want to add that. Let me find a file that's not a video. Here we go. All right. So once this Document Check has a document attached to it, which they all should. This is when I set up for training. Now you'll see the option to download that file. So when you click on that action arrow, you'll see a download option there where you can download and review that documentation. We're asking that access points put details in the comments here about a time frame that that document applies to, especially for documenting homelessness. And we're also asking that they put their organization name in that comment box, so that, you know, if any follow-up is needed, we know who actually uploaded that document. I can't promise you that they're going to follow that best practice every single time, but that's what we're asking them to do to make it a little easier for you to know which document is for which time period for this client. So after I've reviewed all their documentation, download it, put it in their file, do whatever you need to do, you're going to want to switch back to your organization away from Dallas and Collin Counties CAS so that you can go and accept that referral or mark another referral outcome. So I'm going to click on Dallas and Collin Counties CAS, click on my organization dropdown, and change my organization back to my agency, which for right now is the Bridge. And then I'll go back to my client's dashboard. Maybe I review their Hmis enrollments. Maybe I need to print some of this information, right, to have that in their client record that they were enrolled in a shelter or a street outreach program for that time period. Gather all that documentation that you need to. And then we're going to head back over to our home workspace. So I'm going to click my workspace button, go back to my home workspace. And I'm already back on my incoming housing referrals page because that's where I was last. Of course, I can scroll down here to the menu, click CAS, and click incoming housing referrals if I need to get back to this page. Here for Michael Scott, our first button is the referral outcome button. And again, this is where we're asking you to record unsuccessful outcomes. So let's actually go ahead and do this for this client, Jody Test. I will click the referral outcome button. You can see the referral date here cannot be changed, and this refer from provider should not be changed either. So this is MDHA, this is the person who sent you the referral. Down here, we can record the referral result. So these referral results are the options that are listed in the Hmis data standards by HUD. We have successful referral, which is client accepted, and we're going to do that from a different button, right? So we either have client rejected or provider rejected. Let's say that this is the provider rejecting this referral because the client does not meet eligibility rules, and we can put that in the comments if we'd like. Did not spell that right. There we go. In the provider result, I can also choose an option here to say that this was rejected, and then the comments are required. So if the client was a no-show, the comments are not required, but if you're saying that the provider rejected this referral, we're going to ask you to give us a reason why, just so we can have that documented. I'll also want to record a result date, so today's date. But of course, if you needed to backdate a day or two here, you certainly could. And then once I've completed all of these fields, I'm going to click Save. Now, if we scroll down our incoming housing referrals page, we see a list of rejected referrals. So we can see Jody now on our list of clients that were rejected. And there we see that referral result of rejected has been recorded. Back on Michael Scott's referral, let's actually accept this referral. We reviewed his documentation. Everything is great. We're going to enroll Michael into the program so that he can eventually move into a unit. So our second button here is the Start HMIS Intake button. So when I click on that button, I'm actually taken to the client's dashboard and then immediately into a workflow. So you can see now I'm on Michael Scott's dashboard and I'm in this intake workflow. Kind of cuts out the middleman of you having to go back and search for that client and go through getting the intake ready. You can just do it straight from this page. And what that's going to do is give you referral outcome as something that you can record inside the workflow. So this is not going to be the case for any client. Anytime you do an intake, this is only going to be in that page if you're doing the intake from that incoming referrals page. And what that's going to allow us to do is just record that successful referral outcome directly from this intake without having to go through two different pages. So I'll choose Use the Current Client because I'm on Michael Scott's dashboard. And I'll just go through this workflow, enrolling this client in my program the way I normally would. So reviewing all of this information, reviewing family members' information. For sake of time, I'm not going to go through the details of this enrollment. You guys already know how to enroll clients in your program. Of course, I'm going to make sure that the project is correct, check the box next to each family member, and then backdate project start if I need to. Let's backdate this by 1 day. Okay, now I'll go through the universal data assessment with my client. I can default their last assessment and then have that conversation with them to make sure that that information is accurate and up to date as of this date and time, which I'm saying I had this conversation yesterday. Here's some referrals popping, some notifications popping up for us. I'm going to just dismiss those. This client's prior living situation was a shelter. That's where they were staying before. We'll say they stayed there for a while. Just going to put in some information here. Looks like that has already been defaulted. Their barriers, I'll confirm that with the client and save and close. I can default domestic violence and then save. Trying to get ahead of myself here. I can default income and then, of course, confirm with the client that that's accurate and save and close. And then the very last page of this workflow from that incoming referrals page is the referral outcome. So here you can see that the date has already been populated for my project start date, and the provider result has already been populated for me too, saying that I'm enrolling the client into the project. This referral result is going to be a successful referral, and then if I need to put any comments here, I can, but they're not required. So that other page is where we're asking you to record unsuccessful referrals. Obviously, you saw that you can record successful ones there as well, but what we're trying to do is save you time. So if you use that intake button to record successful ones directly from that incoming housing referral page, then you'll be able to skip, recording it on the other page and just record it here. Once I've made sure all those fields are filled in, I'll click Save. And then, of course, always click Finish to close your workflow. So now my client is enrolled in my program. And if I go back to my housing workspace and view my incoming referrals page, I'm going to refresh that page. Now I see Michael listed under the list of clients who are enrolled into my project. So we have that referral result recorded as well. So that incoming housing referrals page is how you're going to be managing those referrals. And again, while only one person at your agency receives those notifications, anyone at your agency who has access to Client Track and access to HMIS can come in and view this page. No special access needed to come in and record referral outcomes or enroll a client into a program after they've been referred. Let's see here. I have a quick list of topics on the screen just to review things we've already covered and things that we're going to recover now that we're back from the break. So we have looked at pretty much everything related to referrals up to this point, and now we're sort of shifting gears and looking at unit management. And I don't really have a lot of details on the slides for this. What I'm going to do is go over these slides and then jump into the system and actually do most of the training from the system. But I wanted to put some information in the slides for you as some sort of reminders and a way for you to take notes. And if you're looking back on these resources later on, just to give you something to reference. However, you'll see that the next slides are not very detailed. They don't have a lot of screenshots and that sort of thing, because we have cheat sheets on how to do all of this. And I want to make sure that you're using those when you're needing details on how to go through all of these steps. So we are going to look at editing a reservation, recording a housing move-in and checking that client into your program or into your unit, excuse me, editing that check-in if you need to, and then of course project exit and checking a client out when it is time for them to move out of that unit. And then Frida's going to present for a few minutes for us on how to update your units in HMIS if you need to change what we have set up for you in the system. So I have a few reminders about each of these actions before we jump in. Editing reservations, there's a quick list of steps for you on the screen. The main thing here is on this page, and I'll show you where this happens in the system. You don't want to check your client in if you're not ready to. So it's easy when you're editing that reservation to accidentally record a check-in date. So we want to make sure we're being aware of which date we're changing. For moving in and checking a client into your unit, you're going to record the housing move-in date via an update assessment from the client's workspace, and then immediately go check that client into a unit from your housing workspace. After that, we'll look at editing a check-in, and we'll do that from our current reservations page, sort of similar to editing a reservation. So we'll see, the differences there. And then for checkout, we're going to also do that from the current residence page, and then we can confirm that checkout by changing the date on that page to see the next day after checkout and make sure, yes, that client is actually checked out. So again, not a lot of details there. We're going to actually spend most of the rest of our time in Client Track, but I did want to have those reminders in your handouts just in case you're following along with the slides. And we can actually start picking right back where we left off with our client, Michael Scott. So let's say that we have accepted Michael into the program, and now he is ready to come and move into a unit, right? First, I'm going to navigate over to my client's workspace. And we have Michael Scott's dashboard. Again, we have his enrollment in our CARES ESG Rapid Rehousing Program. So the very first thing we're going to do when a client is ready to move in is record their housing move-in date. And most likely we're going to do that with an update assessment. So if your client is moving in on the same day as project start, you can record that housing move-in date to match their project start date and record it at entry. However, more likely than not, that client's going to be accepted into the program and then move in at a later date. And that's when we'll use an update assessment to record that housing move-in date. So I will, just a normal update assessment, click on the action arrow next to this client's enrollment and choose the update/annual assessment option. Here, let me just unpin this menu to have it go away. Here on the HUD program enrollment page is where I will record the housing move-in date here on the right-hand side of my screen. So you can see my client's project start date was hypothetically yesterday, right? And let's say today they're moving into the unit. So once I have recorded that housing move-in date, I'll click Save. And then I'll need to continue with an update assessment. So I'm going to choose during program enrollment or update assessment on the top. And then continue the update assessment like I normally would. So I can default and then confirm with the client for each page that we have the most up-to-date information for them in the system. And if not, record that. I'm not going to make any changes to the barriers page. I'll save and close. Domestic violence, I can default and then confirm with the client. Same thing for income, and maybe this time my client does have some income now that they're moving in, so I can, record that however I want to. Just pick one. So any changes that you need to make or updates to the client's record, definitely make them. And then, of course, always click Finish to close your workflow. And now my client has a housing move-in date recorded in the system. Immediately from here, I'm going to switch over to my housing workspace and check this client into a unit. So I am looking for the Bridge, CARES ESG, and I'm only noting that because I have access to every facility in training. I want to make sure I'm choosing the right one. From my client's workspace, I'm going to click my workspace button and navigate over to my housing workspace. I already have that facility up. But in my menu on the left, if I need to find that facility, I can search or I can click View Facilities to see a list of facilities that I have access to. I'm looking for this CARES ESG Rapid Rehousing Program. And you can see that this room has already been reserved for this client. So it says 4 of 5 rooms available because 1 room is being reserved and held for Michael because of that referral from CAS. So I'll click on the facility that I want to check this client into. In my menu, I'm going to pin that open. In my menu on the left, under the housing section, I can go to current reservations to see a list of reservations in this facility. So here we see Michael's reservation that was made for him by the CAS admin when he was referred. Say, I've spoken with Michael and hypothetically, he knows that he's going to be here, but like maybe in the next 2 weeks instead of the next week, and I want to reserve this unit for a little bit longer. I can click this folder here and it says Edit Reservation. When I mouse over that, that Edit Reservation button is going to allow you to change these reservation beginning and end dates. So if you need to extend that reservation for whatever reason for a client, you certainly can. Note that it is going to ask me to complete 2 required fields. The first is the room or unit really where I'm reserving for that client. And I think this one was Unit 1. And then the enrollment that I'm using to reserve this unit for the client, and that's his enrollment in my program. So this client is going to have an enrollment in your program, and you're going to need to specify which unit you're reserving for that client. And then once you've edited those dates, if you've needed to, you can click Save. It's reached capacity. Of course it has. Maybe someone's already checked in. Maybe it was room 2. There we go. And now we can see that those reservation dates have been changed here for him. So his reservation has been extended. So after you have recorded that housing move-in date, right, we're here to check him into his unit. Very easy. We just type in the check-in date. And if I click, it's going to automatically default to the project start date. You can see that this is 6/8, which is the day I recorded for project start. I want to make sure that this matches my housing move-in date. So I'm going to change that to 6/9. And it's also going to, by default, fill in a check-in end date, which is the end date of this reservation. You can leave that blank to have the check-in be an open-ended. It's not a required field. And then you'll see that the enrollment defaults to his enrollment in my program. I'm also going to need to select the room here at the top. So I reserved Unit 2 for him. So let me change that to Unit 2 and then click Save. So now we see that this checkbox is filled in. Michael is checked into this unit, room 2, and he has this check-in date here. And now instead of just an edit reservation button, we also have an edit check-in button. So this edit check-in button is going to allow us to make any edits to that check-in we just recorded. If we need to say we accidentally recorded the wrong date, we need to make any changes here, we can certainly do that. I'm not going to change this date because I only have yesterday or today in the system. I know that this is the correct housing move-in date. If I needed to change it, it's as simple as changing that date here and then clicking save. However, I'm going to leave it accurate and matching my housing move-in date. Note that when you do come to edit a check-in, it is going to ask you to select the number of bedrooms in this unit before you save the page. It will not automatically fill that in for you. At least that's been my experience. So if you get an error, if you're just looking at the top of this page and you try to save and get an error, scroll down the page and make sure that all of the required fields are completed. You don't necessarily have to have every field here, just the ones that have that red star next to them. Once all of those required fields are filled in and I've made any edits I need to that check-in, then I can click save. And we would see those edits displaying here on our current reservations page. And then, of course, once that client is ready to check out, we're going to go through a really similar process. So the first thing we're going to do is actually exit that client from the program and then check them out of a unit. And all of this is happening from this housing menu, our current reservations or current residence page. Now, when I click on current residents, I can see Michael in my current residence list. And this is where I'll come to check him out in just a moment. We see that other individual that was taking up unit 1, which is why I wasn't able to check Michael into there, which makes sense. So quickly going through this checkout process, like I said, first we're going to do that from our client's dashboard. So it's, let's just say hypothetically, several months have passed. Now Michael is leaving this housing unit and we're going to exit him from the program and then check him out of the unit. Of course, I'll go to my program enrollment here on the client's dashboard and choose exit the enrollment, just like I normally would for an exit assessment. I'll choose an exit destination for this client, wherever they may be moving to. Make sure that I'm ending my case assignment with them if I need to do that. And I can record any services at exit. And all of this exit assessment is a normal exit assessment that you would go through for your client. So I'm going to default, confirm with my client that we have the most up-to-date information in the system for each of these pages. And for sake of time in the training, I'm going to click save and close because really I want to spend as much time as we can here in the rest of this training going over your questions. So once I've completed that whole exit workflow, I'm going to click finish to close the workflow. Now my client has been exited from my program. Immediately after that, I'm going to navigate over to my housing workspace and check the client out of that unit. So same steps as before. If I need to find that facility, I can go to view facilities and select the right facility to make sure that I'm in the right place. Go to my housing menu and on the current reservations page, this is where I am able to record a checkout date for the client. So I will need to choose the unit that matches whatever unit this client is checked into to save this page. You'll see that it's a required field and nothing is selected right now. So I'm going to select room 2. It's going to ask me, am I okay with the page refreshing? And I'm going to say yes. So now I only see Michael because he's the only person checked into unit 2. And I'm going to record a checkout date. I'll record it for today, although clearly it might not let me record it for today. Clearly, you're not going to be recording this typically for the same day as check-in. You're going to be recording that for whatever later date, so you shouldn't have that issue. And then I'll click save. What I want to point out here is that Michael is checked out, but he's still showing on this current residence page. And the reason is that this date at the top determines which clients display here. So if I deselect the room, I'll see a list of all clients who are checked into units, checked into this facility on this date. If I change the date to tomorrow, which is Michael's checkout date, I will still see him on this list because until tomorrow, he's still checked in. Once I change this date to a day after check-in, then I'll see that he is no longer on this list. So this date is going to default to today when you come to this page. If you want to confirm that that client is going to be checked out, you can change that date to the day after checkout, and then you'll see that that client is removed, so you'll know that they'll be checked out on that date. And of course, you can come back at that date and check it again if you'd like to. Now, again, we have additional training material on all of these unit management aspects of the system, checking clients into units, managing your residents with this current residence page, editing reservations, editing check-ins, checking clients out, recording housing move-in dates, right? All of those things that we have just gone over after this break. We have cheat sheets available. We have training videos from when we originally rolled this out a few months ago available for you if you need to review that in more detail. Like I said, that part of this training is really a review since we've been implementing that over the last several months. And what I want to make sure we have plenty of time for is Q&A to go over some of these new CAS changes, and then, make sure that you guys are understanding how to do this piece if you have any questions here as well. Before we continue, I do want to just kind of, first of all, re-emphasize that the reason that this unit management piece is so crucial is that when you check a client into a unit, it takes that unit in the system and marks it as unavailable. That's going to allow our CAS admins to then refer to units when they are available, right? So if the CAS admin is going in to refer a client and they see in the system that all of your units are unavailable, every unit has a client checked in, they know that you don't have any available spots at your program. If they log in and see that they have, you have 3 units available, then that's when they're going to try to refer to one of those units. So we're trying to streamline our communication and get away from you having to submit a SpiceWorks ticket every time you have open slots. And what we're going to do is use case conferencing during the HPL meetings to, continue to have that communication, matching clients to the right programs and that sort of thing. But we want to be able to use the system to its fullest potential. So keeping the system up to date in this way, as close to real time as possible, is what's going to allow our CAS admins here to really make use of that referral piece and referring to the units that you have open at any given time. So I'm actually going to hand it over to Frida now and allow her to talk to you for a few minutes about how to update this unit inventory in HMIS if you see that what we have built in the system or set up in the system is not correct for your program. So Frida, do you want me to share my screen and click on anything for you, or you want me to just let you talk?
Do you mind if I take over? Can I take over for just a moment, Megan? Because I have it on my screen.
Absolutely, go ahead.
Okay, great. So good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for being in attendance. And I'm just looking for the button. Okay, there we go. Share my screen. Okay, so what you should be seeing on my screen is mdhadallas.org. Is that what you're saying, Megan?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. So I want everyone to know that it's important that you let us know. Well, let me back up for a moment. We've implemented CAS in several phases over the last couple of months. So I've had a conversation with just about every agency on how to set up your housing facility in HMIS. And that was usually a phone conversation because I wanted you to have an understanding of how housing facilities work in HMIS so that we can get them set up properly. Now, going forward, we won't need to have those we shouldn't need to have those phone conversations anymore, and you shouldn't have to submit a service request. We've actually created an online form, and that online form is on our website. Notice that I'm at mdhadallas.org, and just to show you how I got here, if you click on the menu button in your top right corner, there's a section that's dedicated to HMIS, and I'm going to click on Current Documents. When I click on Current Documents, to the left, there's a column titled Compliance Documents. There is an agency project profile, and this project profile is needed anytime that your agency has a new program that goes on that needs to be set up in HMIS. And this is what that online project profile looks like. Within this project profile, there is a section that's titled Bed and Unit Inventory. And I just want, not everyone here, there's about almost 100 folks on this call. Not all of you are going to be submitting this information to us. It's usually going to be your program managers that will submit a request for us to set up a program for you. So within this project profile, the section titled Bed and Unit Inventory, we need these numbers that's based on your contract. So for permanent supportive housing programs, you have a contract that states how many households and how many units are dedicated for that particular program. Rapid rehousing programs, you have a budget that you've done that will tell you how many households you'll be able to serve. So we're looking on the project profile, we're looking for that actual number that's in the contract on your project profile. And that information, ladies and gentlemen, is what we use to also pull to our HIC, our housing inventory chart. However, we are very much aware that if you have extra dollars in the budget, that you're going to serve more than what's in your contract. And so we need those numbers in HMIS for the housing facility to actually reflect reality. So notice that this page has just been updated. The project profile is at the top, and then about 2 sections underneath, you're going to see HMIS facility setup form. And this HMIS facility setup form is how you are going to tell us how to set up a new housing facility if you're a new program, or if you need to update the number of units that we have set up in HMIS for your housing facility. So I won't go through each of these questions with you, because these are all of the questions that I ask those individuals when I have those phone conversations with you, specifically about that will tell us how we need to set up your program in HMIS. Notice that some housing facilities in our community, they actually have floor plans. So if you have a floor plan that you can attach to this housing facility setup form, that would be great, because that's going to allow me to actually set up those facilities in HMIS the way that it looks, or the way that the floor plan is designed at that particular building or unit that we're setting up in the system. So I just want to let you know that this form is available. You don't have to submit a service request anymore that says, hey, I need to add 2 units. I'm going to ask that you come here and that you set up this form. All housing facilities that they have been set up in HMIS, if your housing facility is not set up, then you cannot receive any referrals in HMIS. And remember, we're stepping away from SpiceWorks, and so anytime that you have an opening at your agency, our CAS admins, Stephanie DeMar, she's going to be able to see in HMIS that there's an opening, and that's how referrals are going to happen. So it's very, very important that you are using your housing facilities, that you're checking clients into those units when they've moved into the unit, so that MDHA can see that there's space available, and then that they can send those referrals. And if your housing facility again gets full, but your program is able to serve more clients, that's where you're going to use that housing facility form that's on our website, so that you can let us know to set up those, to add additional units.
Thank you, Frida. At this point, we are going to jump into questions, but I just want to take a moment while I have your attention before we jump into all of these conversations to point out the fact that in addition to getting your questions answered here in the chat or during this Q&A session, we also have office hours that we're making available every week this month for you to come and ask questions of the HMIS team, of the CAS programs team, as we're going through this transition as a community. So we do have a goal of June 30th, the end of this month, of having this fully implemented to where we are not using Basecamp for the HPL, not using SpiceWorks for referrals, or document updates. We're going to transition all of this into HMIS. We're asking that everyone complete training that they need by that date at the very latest, and that your agency has started to implement these changes internally as well. So we have these office hours set up to support you in that process, to make sure that we're available to you and carving out time to answer your questions. These office hours dates are available on our website that is here on the screen, and I'll put it in the chat for you as well. It's www.mdhadallas.org/CAS to HMIS. And you'll also see it under the CAS section of the website. Let me pull that up for you here. If you click on the menu and go under the coordinated assessment section, there's this page here called CAS Transition to HMIS. And that page is where you'll see all of these office hours listed. So when you click on one of these dates, that will download the calendar invite for you, and then you can add that to your calendar, whether that's Outlook, your Apple Calendar, whatever you use to keep track of your meetings. And that will allow you to just have that office hours on your calendar. If you need to come and ask questions, great. If not, then this isn't a commitment to come. You don't need to worry about, registering or telling us you can't be there or anything like that. But we wanted these to be available to you so that even if last minute you decide, hey, I want to join, you have the link right there. And we don't have any set agenda for any of those meetings. It is literally just us carving time out for you to come and ask your questions.